and welcome back to the Hormone Nutrition Podcast. I'm Trista Chan, a registered dietitian and founder of Nest and Nurture Health. We're a Canadian nutrition-led platform helping people improve their relationship with food and improve their hormone health without the extremes, without the restriction, or that really pervasive diet culture noise. So thanks so much for tuning in. Okay, before we jump into today's content, a little bit of context and a few updates for those of you who likely, if you're listening, you have PMOS/PCOS, right? So first, I'm going to start with a little bit of a big news, but let's backtrack a little bit. So if you've been listening or following along on our socials for a while, you'll know that earlier this year, I had shared that I was completing some surveys from Monash University, gaining and gathering basically healthcare providers, patients, advocacy group, researchers' perspectives on renaming the PCOS condition, right? Polycystic ovary syndrome. And if you keep up on the hormone health news and space, you've likely seen earlier this year in the headlines that PCOS was officially renamed to PMOS, to polyendocrine metabolic ovarian syndrome. So same condition, same presentation, just a new name that reflects that full, hormonal and metabolic big picture, right? So all that to say, moving forward, I will be using PMOS. We're slowly updating all of our content. We have like thousands at this point of like blogs, podcasts. We're slowly renaming it PMOS. You might still hear me interchangeably say PMOS/PCOS as we transition, just because not everyone is aware of this new term, and I want people to be able to still self-identify when they're going through our contents, to be able to get that nutrition support, get that mental health support, right? And we have a ton of free resources, so you'll kind of be hearing me say that interchangeably. Okay. And because of that, this summer, we've actually been working really hard behind the scenes to update our PMOS recovery program. We've given it a serious refresh. You may have seen the behind the scenes on Instagram if you follow my founder accounts. So now, as we gear up for our fall cohort launch, we're going to have updated, brand new modules with new resources, updated protocols. What's so exciting to me as a provider working in the hormone health space is that there's always new developments, especially in such an underserved space, right? So the format is going to be that exact same foundation that's supported dozens of people running through our programs. So the same kind of format of the coaching calls for accountability, the video course with over 20 videos. So you learn everything you need to know about PMOS, right? The daily community, being in a space with people who also get it and get your pains and can celebrate your successes, and they know how much it means to you. The content in itself, though, is just going to be a little bit more current and a little bit sharper. And I'm very, very excited to bring that to you this fall. And as I was updating the content and reflecting on previous sessions, I was asking myself, okay, what are some of the biggest questions that people still have when it comes to PMOS, right? Despite the updated research, what are the questions and pain points that this community keeps bringing back and back and back? Time and time again, this is one of many, but today's podcast episode is going to be about a consistent question, and it is around exercise. So we hear questions all the time in our program and in our one-on-one clinic, like, is exercise bad? Should I avoid cardio? Does it impact my cortisol levels? This one influencer told me I should be cycle syncing. This other influencer told me to forget about it. This other influencer said strength training only, no cardio, vice versa. What should I eat? Should I do it fasted exercise? Should I exercise at night? So there's just like a ton of confusion around this topic. And I thought, you know what? Perfect time to bring it to the podcast, especially as we're updating the research and doing more content for this for our next launch. So today I'm going to bring some evidence-informed advice and nuance to this conversation. As with anything hormone health related or just like health in general, it's not black and white, right? So we're going to talk about why exercise is hard for you to stick to, how exercise actually impacts your hormone and your PMOS/PCOS, the big picture on nutrition and recovery, and then because I'm a dietitian and I always love talking about food, right? I'm going to share 5 things you can eat before a workout that's going to help you feel more energized, better supported, and really going to position exercise as something that's going to, you're going to get the most out of your movements. Okay. So let's start with why you might find exercise confusing or hard to stick to. Is throughout the years, I've noticed there's kind of 2 scenarios, right? 2 ends of the spectrum. The first one is maybe you're someone who genuinely cares so much about your health and like doing it right, quote unquote, that you end up spending more time trying to figure out what the best type of exercise is rather than doing it consistently, right? So I'm talking to those of you who are like scrolling on TikTok nonstop and finding like the best exercise routine, the best exercise strategy. The thing about that it's never ending, right? And instead of feeling empowered to move and finding a routine that's enjoyable and sustainable, you end up like second guessing every decision, and physical activity starts to feel confusing, maybe intimidating, maybe burdensome, right? Instead of something that's actually like enjoyable or supports your health. So in many ways, our relationship with food or exercise can be so similar to relationship with food, and we're always like trying to fix it and find the perfect one, that we kind of get stuck in this like analysis paralysis state. And then we're like worried about our menstrual cycle, how that impacts exercise, etc. So that's kind of one bucket. Another bucket, so to speak, is that I do often see some people who care also so deeply about their health, but it shows up differently. So I'm talking to those of you who are incredibly driven, high performing. Maybe you take so much pride in living a healthy lifestyle. You're waking up early, you're doing the fasted HIIT or cardio workouts. You're on your black coffee. You're doing meetings after meetings, right? Maybe you find yourself like really hard to slow down and give yourself permission to rest. And you feel like anytime you're resting or not moving or not performing, not hitting the next PR, there's a little bit of guilt and feeling like you're letting yourself down, right? Or you're falling behind and you're not doing enough, right? But over time, you might find that you're constantly pushing yourself without the fuel you need, without the recovery time, that this can lead to burnout. And then you might start finding that like your hormones are flaring up, right? You're not feeling the best, right? Your hair is falling out. You're tired all the time. You're like wired, but tired, but you're still pushing through and somehow still exercising and doing all the things. So although these 2 experiences are very different, they often stem from the same place, right? So an overall confusion about what exercise should look like and a relationship and routine with exercise, which may not be the most sustainable. So let's clear the air whether or not you can relate to either of those on, okay, what exercise actually does to your hormones and metabolism. All right. It's important to understand that because neither of those 2 approaches really set you up for long-term success. And it's delaying, right, the actual time that can be spent building a sustainable routine, which is going to give you all the metabolic benefits for PCOS. And the bottom line is that any type of exercise, it is shown in literature over and over and over again, any type of exercise is health promoting with PMOS. And exercise itself usually isn't the problem. But I'm jumping ahead here. So how does it improve your PMOS? 1, exercise promotes insulin sensitivity and blood sugar control. We know bodies with PMOS, regardless of size, about 70% or more have insulin resistance. So if you're exercising, think of your muscles like a sponge. It's immediately going to pull and suck in all that sugar from your bloodstream, especially if you're doing it after exercise. After meals, exercise can actually reduce your blood sugars independent of insulin, which is so, so cool, right? That's what exercise does, increase insulin sensitivity. It also supports your heart health, and time again, shown in high quality studies, it is so protective for your cardiometabolic health. And we know that PMOS, it's not just like a period problem. It's not just a fertility problem. It significantly can increase your risk of heart disease and cardiovascular, events over time, right? So exercise is super heart healthy. And on the day-to-day, it's going to support better digestion, bowel regularity, energy, focus, mood, and ultimately lead to a higher quality of life. And somewhere along the way, for some reason, despite all these benefits, conversation has shifted from like, how do we move more? And how do we find a routine that we enjoy and like, right? And how do we find a balance that actually incorporates cardiovascular aerobic exercise and weight bearing exercise and restore, right? To, okay, like, how do I cycle sync? How do I, make this the best routine, right? And it becomes so restrictive and prescriptive as well. So I want to address a myth around cortisol. So one barrier that I hear from a lot of people is, oh, I am afraid of exercising because, especially high intensity exercise, because I heard it shoots up my cortisol levels. So there's a lot of actually nuance here and a lot of misinformation so we can unpack. So cortisol is actually a stress hormone that your body needs to survive, right? So there's a natural rise in the morning and a fall. So the natural rise is what gives us energy to wake up in the morning, perform, and then it falls at night so we can go to sleep, right? So part of that is linked to our circadian rhythm. Exercise does naturally increase cortisol, and that is okay. So this stress hormone is actually increased when we're exercising because it helps us, have enough energy, right? It makes the stored energy available to your muscles. So it gets that fuel it needs to work. In other words, AKA cortisol, it can help power your workouts. That said, that increase is temporary, right? It is a myth that it will stay high if you're adequately fueling, allowing time for recovery, for sleep, your cortisol levels will naturally decline. And that is a very normal, healthy response, right? Where problems can come up with shooting up your cortisol and keeping it high is when you're not creating space in the big picture of your life for recovery. So this means rather than asking ourselves, is cardio bad for cortisol? The question should be, am I fueling adequately before, during exercise, after exercise? Am I sleeping enough? Am I giving myself enough rest days? Am I managing my overall stress load? And am I essentially giving my body the tools it needs to recover? Right? So we're kind of pigeonholing exercise as the problem when really it's the burnout that comes from underfueling, lack of rest, and then overtraining in itself. It's that big picture that can become problematic. And I would hate for you to think that you have to avoid something that is so health promoting and take that away from your life, especially if you enjoy it. Rather, let's think health by addition, right? Nutrition by addition, health by addition, movement by addition. Another question I get oftentimes is, should I cycle sync? And this is basically the idea that you should be following specific regimens, exercise regimens during specific phases of your cycle. So some thoughts here, once again, very nuanced. But overall, I personally find the cycle syncing trend and term super. So in general, no, I don't recommend that you follow whatever cycle syncing exercise regimen is you find online, right? Where you can only do yoga in your luteal phase. You can only do high intensity exercise during your ovulation, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, metabolic changes and hormone fluctuations do affect how you feel throughout your cycle, your energy, your capacity, your mood, your output, right? Your metabolism, your metabolic rate literally changes throughout your cycle. So maybe in your luteal phase, you do feel like you have a lower capacity. And because of that, you opt for lower intensity, right? So the key is actually listening to your body, going back to your own awareness of how you're feeling in every phase versus listening to an external plan. Right? So ultimately, it's looking at the physiology, combining it with how they're feeling, and you are the expert of what is going to be exercise and an accessible form of exercise for you. Right? So I really kind of want to challenge how we're viewing it instead of thinking, I can't do cardio because I have my period. It's very limiting for yourself, right? There's a lot of self-limitations and it's very prescriptive. Think, what is my capacity today? What can I achieve? What is accessible for me versus what is aspirational, right? And maybe that is lower intensity during luteal phase, but maybe that's not too. Maybe you're actually feeling great and you can challenge yourself to a little bit more higher intensity, and that's wonderful too, right? So you know yourself best. Okay. So that being said, now that we've cleared the air on a little bit of the exercise myths, let's talk about what to eat before your workout to prevent cortisol staying high, burnouts, poor recovery, injury, etc. So how do we actually add into our day so we're feeling energized, strong, and we're recovering after and actually supporting our muscles, our blood sugars, our heart health, digestion, all that good stuff. Right? So we're going to talk just about pre-workouts today because if you're eating before a workout, you're essentially giving your body the fuel it needs to perform. So for pre-workout, what we want is a quicker digesting carbohydrates to give your body that quick fuel, quick energy, and a little bit of a protein to extend that energy life and that energy release a little bit more. Generally, we do want it to be a little bit lower fiber, lower fat, because these two nutrients we take a longer time to digest. So we don't want anything to really like sit in our gut, right? Because that's not going to be super comfortable, whatever exercise you're doing. So this can be like a small meal or a snack 1 to 2 hours before your workout, just enough time to give yourself time to like digest so you're not cramping, right? But soon close enough to your workout that you're like still getting that energy and that fuel source too. So you can play around with that based on the daily context of your day, other meal timing, right? What time of day you're exercising, but just think carbohydrates and a little protein 1 to 2 hours before in general. So some ideas for you that are some of my go-tos, and I find a lot of our PMOS recovery members and one-on-one clients are just like really easy and portable. This can be like a fruit with a little bit of yogurt, right? So this could even be like a banana and you're packing a small snack pack of yogurt. This is great for on the go, especially if you tend to exercise like after work. You know, you get off work at 5, you hit the gym and then you go dinner, right? These are super portable options. Just snack on as you go. So you're not like burning out during your exercise and then starving by dinner time and then binging, right? So a fruit with snack pack of a Greek yogurt. This could be fruit with a little bit of peanut butter or tahini as well in there if you're at home. This could be dates with some peanut butter and tahini, especially if you're doing a little bit more aerobic or endurance-based exercise, right? Those quick carbs is going to fuel you through. This could be a quick smoothie or oats, like instant oats or rolled oats with a little bit of nut butter. Or you can put some instant oats with some nut butter and some milk in a smoothie, right? Rice cakes are also great because it's going to give you a little bit of a quick digesting carb, right? But it's not heavy. It's not going to sit in your gut and cause some nausea as you're exercising. So maybe some rice cakes and you're putting a little bit of cottage cheese on there, a little bit of tahini, a little bit of peanut butter in there. This is a great light snack as well. So there are some options that you can keep in your back pockets 1 to 2 hours prior once again. And the main takeaways for today though is remember that exercise with PMOS is not something you need to overfixate on or think, right? It's truly one of the most powerful tools that is like free, right? If you need to modify exercise, great. You want to do it at home, great. But it is generally free. Moving is free, right? And it is so beneficial for metabolic health, cardiovascular health, all of that good stuff with PMOS. And rather than thinking, okay, what is the best exercise? What's the perfection? It's more around, okay, how do I build this into my routine that's sustainable? And with big picture, how can I connect this to adequate nutrition and rest pre-post fueling? That's going to help bring my hormone levels back to baseline after. That's going to help with muscle recovery, growth, and prevention of injury. And even just a simple pre-workout snack 1 to 2 hours before with carbs and some protein is going to give you that fuel you need. Okay. And if today's episode is resonating with you and you feel like your relationship with food, exercise, energy could use a little bit more support, we are opening up our next round of PMOS recovery program this fall, which is so exciting. It's totally refreshed, like I mentioned, updated with new research, new content, but exact same format of community coaching, live-paced, self-paced videos, right? So it's going to really meet all your learning needs And it's going to be helping you build a sustainable approach to nutrition and movement without any of the extremes. So you can get on the wait list through the link below. And on the wait list, you will be the first to know when the doors open. We do keep the groups quite intimate because there's a lot of, we're creating a safe, supportive space, right? So you will be the first to know when the doors open. So thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. If you liked this episode, please like, comment, review, subscribe, share it with a loved one, and I will catch you in the next episode.